Okay, my friends, this is going to be fun. The Empire Strikes Back. This guy, I'm pretty sure I know who this guy is. He called himself now Geology Rocks. He's a PhD, and he's been after me for at least 10 years or so. Very nasty guy. And really arrogant, and, oh, I'm so smart, and I'm a PhD, and you're an idiot, and it'd only take you 1 minute to look these things up. What's the matter with you? And on and on and on. And at one time, I did block him long ago, and but he just never stops, And he is supposedly telling me that I'm a big shot, and I tell people where to drill, and I know exactly what to do, and drill blowouts, and you have no idea about this and that. Well, maybe I don't know about drill blowouts, but I know why things pressurize under the ground is because digestive systems and hearts and lungs and all of the bodily tissues really combust almost underground. It's pressurized semi-combustion. And when they hit the atmosphere, so I understand it very well, my friend. And I'm going to call him Paul because I think that's his name. So anyway, we're going to address Paul's comments to me and my comments back to him. I must admit I was extremely gracious because I assaulted him back. He assaulted me, I assaulted him. And then I said, well, that's not the way to handle this. I'm going to apologize and see if we can get into a discussion. Well, let's see where that led. Before we get started right up front, I want to apologize for my demeanor. I was a little harsh. But when you're told that you have no evidence, with all the evidence I have, with the CAT scans, the DNA, the specimens, the chemistry, all of that stuff, and I'm told I have no evidence, and that I have to listen to what a PhD geologist has to tell me, well, then that sparked me, and I'm sorry I did come on a little strong. Take it for what it is. I'm not going to do it over again. I thought about it because it's sometimes I get a little bitter, and I don't mean to be that way. But this has been a long journey, my friends, and for them to deny reality in such an unbelievable way has become very old now. All right, this is the guy now. We went back and forth. It got very nasty. And so I said, I apologize. If you would like to discuss your opinion, I am willing. So he responds with this. Here's something I'd value your opinion on. Listen to this. Okay, so I ended up apologizing, basically. I said, do you want to do a Zoom so I can destroy you? At that point, we're still at odds pretty heavily. So then I said, I'm being nasty. So right away, I sent back. And I said, I apologize. If you'd like to discuss your opinion, I am willing. How gracious can you be, Roger? Yes, thank you, I was. So what does he write back? This is from Geology Rocks. Now, let's go through his statements, because this is actually pretty good. All right, we went back and forth assaulting each other, and finally I said, I'm trying to get him to do a Zoom with me. So I said, do you want to do a Zoom so I can destroy you? And I don't think he will or would, so this is my Zoom. No, but I did finally say, I apologize. If you'd like to discuss your opinion, I'm willing. And this is what he sent back. Now, this could be useful because he's out in the field and he's drilling. He's talking about microfossils and all these kind of things, which he doesn't understand what he's looking at. He's just reading off of some script, which they read to him, and he said, here's what you read back to everybody else. Now, I know I'm going to be kind of nasty. I can't help myself with this guy. This has been a long time. I know who he is. I'm almost 100% certain, but because he's saying the same things he said 10 years ago. So here we go. This actually could work out if Paul really takes the time to work with me rather than trying to instruct me to read his books. Now, here's the thing. Here's what he says. Here's something I'd value your opinion on. How is it that if geology is just a random heap of dead giants, then how is that when we drill into this random pile of carcasses, we find the same microscopic fossils, always occurring in the same order? Well, that's how biology works. You have muscles and tendons and bones and all that stuff. Many, many thousands of them everywhere. Well, yes, that's because the whole place was covered with biology. I do have a PhD in geology, but I'm not what you think of as an academic sitting in an ivory tower writing peer-reviewed papers. Thank God. I work in commercial industry. All right, so he's telling people where to drill and making decisions. He says, "Here, we make decisions, cost companies hundreds of millions of dollars, and find the raw materials that keep the world economy going." I know where all these things are. I know where, very easily I know where these things are. They spent hundreds of millions of dollars. Well, anyway, one aspect of this is using these tiny microfossils. He doesn't understand microfossils at all, to guide drilling. They occur in such a predictable way. Yes, they do. That's the order of biology, that we have global zonation schemes based on them. Yeah, because here's where Quetzalcoatl was. Here's where these other giants were. Yes, no question whatsoever. I do too. So I have a zonation scheme on my own. As we drill, one species is recorded. As we drill deeper, another, then another, and another. No, that's not. They don't understand what they're saying. Always in the same order. Yeah. Skin, interstitium, flesh, tendon, bone, organs. Yes, Paul. Always in the same order. This occurs whether we drill in West Africa, Asia, Mexico, anywhere. It doesn't matter. Yes, because they're all body parts. Always the same species. Well, not always the same species. Some of them are dragons. Some of them are always the same species appearing in the same order. No, they're bones and tendons and muscle and so forth. This is an example of the zonation scheme. Oldest at the bottom, youngest at the top. LO means last occurrence, FO means first appearance. They define those NN and CN zones that we find worldwide. Yes, that's from the Triassic era, which I'm trying to talk to them about. And they put it, this is all, I'm just going to tell you, it's nonsense. Total nonsense. They go back billions of years. All right, so now he says this can be very important. If things go wrong, in the worst case, people die. He's talking about drilling and when they have pressure blowouts. One of my early jobs was sitting on oil rigs while they were drilling. My job was to stop the drilling just above a reservoir known to be overpressurized. We could seal the hole with steel pipe and increase the pressure in the hole to balance the pressure expected in the reservoir to allow safe drilling into it. That's a talent. I give you a recommendation for that. That is a talent. And what he did was he used microfossils to do that, which once he hit the fascia, he would see, well, we're just cutting through that layer of fascia. Now we're getting down to the membrane, and now it's going to blow out. As soon as I saw a particular species, I'd like to see those species, Paul. I knew we were right above the reservoir. He was in the membrane, in the fascia. This worked everywhere, every time. Yes, I agree. If we had drilled into the reservoir without increasing the borehole pressure to balance it, first we would have to have high pressure fluids, including gas, flow uncontrollably into the hole and into the surface. And of course, it's going to explode. It's extreme pressures, yes. You may remember the disaster in Gulf. Well, that was what it would look like. If you want to see what happens when high pressure fluids are uncontrolled in a well bore, watch the film Deepwater Horizon. People die in those situations. Of course, it's an explosion. It's it's identical to a volcano. Only you have fluids, not necessarily, poop. Basically, volcanoes are almost always some kind of digestive chunks blowing out of a rectum, or in the case of Iceland right now, that whole fissure system there is, I believe, a digestive system, probably the small intestines or something like that. And it's on the surface. It's going to bubble and bubble and bubble and bubble and bubble until it burns all that stuff off. It could be hundreds of years. I mean, these things are, I believe the whole island might be just one creature. So anyway, he's saying this is what actual geologists do. This sort of thing is just one example of what actual geologists do. It's based on a regular and predictable sequence of microfossils everywhere. So how does that occur if it's just a mess of dead dragons? I just explained it. Why, when we drill in one of your dead dragons, we find thousands of microscopic marine species? No, they're not marine species. They think they're clams. They're not. They're lung alveoli. I just did a video on that yesterday. They're finding, yes, they find lung alveoli everywhere. Why, if we are drilling into a dead giant, would these species always occur in the same order everywhere? Yes, I just explained it. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. Not only do we see all these different fossil types, but they fit with the depositional environmental interpreted from the sedimentary structures. Well, let me tell you something. The sedimentary structures are layers of biology. I sent him some stuff. I'll show you what I sent him. And this all fits with the seismic geometries. All fits with the tectonic settings. Well, as long as you say it does, Paul, that's fine. Everything integrates so well because we have all figured this out and made up all these stories. Now, you don't know any of this, do you, Roger? No, I don't. That's correct, Paul. I don't know any of that because it's not true. And that's okay because it's not true. And you are not a geologist, so I wouldn't expect you to because I'm not smart enough to know those things. But when you propose totally new interpretations of rocks as piles of dead giants, that's not new. That's not new at all. It's exactly what Ovid wrote. That's basically the words that Ovid wrote. This is what's freaking all these people out. All this stuff was written about. The creation, ages of mankind, the flood, Noah, Apollo, Jupiter, Europa, all of those things that were written about in the ancient texts were compiled by Ovid. And here he started all of those works off with this first thing. He says, in the opening lines of the poem, I intend to speak of forms changed into new entities. Accompanying this theme is often violence inflicted upon a victim whose transformation becomes part of the natural landscape. Ovid wrote this in like 0 AD. I mean, he wrote at the time of Julius Caesar. I think it was 8 AD, somewhere around there. And this is he took and compiled 250 what they call myths. They were historical documents that nobody could accept because they were just too unbelievable, and they are. They just, as Paul can't believe it, even with all the evidence in front of him, he can't believe it. He's supposed to be a PhD, highly intelligent, fully, understands everything about it. No, he doesn't understand anything about it, basically. I don't mean to be nasty, Paul. I'd like to have a reasonable engagement here, but you have to open your eyes, my friend. My eyes are fully open. Now, this was 250 myths, 15 books, 12,000 lines of text, all about our ancient history. And that was exactly what it was. And metamorphosis means these gods, which were apparently real, and they could transform themselves into anything they wanted. And these were transformations. They became part of the natural landscape. A great variety among types of transformations take place. Human into inanimate objects, into constellations, into animals, into plants, from animals into funguses, into mushrooms, from humans, one sex to another, into hyenas, into pebbles. They could do anything they wanted. They controlled matter. They controlled matter. They could take it and put it in this shape. They could put it in that shape. They could make it this way. They could make it into a snake. They could make it into a dragon. And that's exactly what they did. Now, these body parts are all over the world. And this brings me into a whole new realm of trying to understand immortality and how these body parts could be there, because these creatures were supposed to be immortal. Typhon was supposed to be an immortal giant creature, and his body is laying across North Africa. And Paul, you have to get your head up in the atmosphere to start understanding this, my friend. All right, I think I have definitely explained all of those things that was his concerns. Now he says I'd have to be able to explain all of that he has described and an overwhelming amount of other observations. No, I've explained everything. You have to explain my stuff. And you would have to explain them better than current geology. Current geology is a joke. Does for anything you say to be credible. No, you have to listen to what I say and then go against my evidence. Your evidence is worthless. It's just guesses. We're talking 250 billion years ago. I mean, insanity. Or whatever it is, 2.5 billion. All of my stuff I picked up off the surface of the earth, laying on the surface of the earth. Velikovsky did the research. It was 3,500 years ago, not billions. And that is when the Triassic happened, because it was the impact of Venus into our atmosphere, boiled the oceans, boiled the waters. And in certain basins where the waters boiled and it was just right, like my area right here, it created a super nice layer of red bed, then gray clay, and then a black cap. And the reason is the red bed was boiled off flesh. The red flesh, which is the clay that is the flesh of the body, boiled off and made a bed, a red, wet clay bed. Then the rest of the bodies, the bones and tendons and all that stuff, collected as another layer, which was the gray clay. And then all the combustion and all that stuff came down on top of it and was the black cap. Now, I'm sure Paul knows about the Triassic and the 3 layers. And it's a worldwide. Yale says it happened in a flash, and it preserved all the mud fossils. They agree with this. I don't know. Maybe Paul hasn't kept up on the research. But here it is right here. This is Yale, exceptional preservation of soft-bodied creatures promoted by silica-rich oceans. I explained all this in my paper in 2015. I think that's when Paul started to attack me, because I was putting out a whole batch of stuff back then, and it was so crushed that I just couldn't get anything out about it. Now, they don't understand this. Yale doesn't understand this at all. And I presented all my stuff to Yale, to Derek Briggs, for years before this, about this exact occurrence. And they agree with it. It causes the fossils, but they don't understand. They say, oh, that's 250 million years ago. It wasn't 3,500 years ago. It's on the surface of the earth. And I have human footprint right in this same layer. Red bed, gray clay, black cap. And the gray clay is pushed down through the red bed. It was all wet at the same time. The Triassic period happened overnight. Okay, so here's Paul again. You see an image on Google Earth and decide it looks a bit like a dragon, so must be a dragon. That is not how science works, Roger. No, not in your world. My world, when you see reality, you understand it. You can't deal with reality. You must be led, Paul. You have to explain how all these millions of fossils occur in dead carcasses and why they always occur in the same order and why they fit with the sedimentology and the tectonics. Because it's all wrong. You guys made up all that stuff. You ignore all of this and abuse everyone who points it out to you. I don't abuse anyone. I am pointing. You are the one that said, oh, you were not nasty to me, my friend. You weren't as nice at all. But you are being kind of cordial at this point. I have to admit. Anyway, so he's saying that I abuse everyone, and I'm getting a little bitter. Yes, yep, that's a fact. It says that is why nobody takes you seriously. I don't care. I take people seriously. They can yell at me as long as they show me evidence. You haven't shown me anything. All you show me is little charts of things and say, we know all these things because we're so smart. No. You don't pay any attention to reality, Paul. That's why you don't understand. He says, you don't have evidence to support your claims. I have evidence to support everything I'm saying. You are the one, my friend, has no evidence and won't allow anyone to point out my errors. No, I found an error. I get errors all the time. That's how I learned. But my errors have led me to the correct conclusions. Your errors are that you just won't pay attention to reality. He says, I'd be very happy to help you out learning some real geology, some of the geology you would need to explain, but you would have to open your mind to reality for that, and I doubt you could. But let me know if you want to. All right, so I sent him back. Is your name Paul? Because I'm almost sure this is the guy. I said, let's discuss on a Zoom meeting if you're willing. I understand exactly why the order is so consistent and the pressure is so high from the expansion of the hydrocarbons in lungs and digestive systems and so forth. It's bio-breakdown, basically pressure combustion inside these cavities. And they're always coated with the same membranes. That's why he sees the same layer, and then he knows just exactly when to stop drilling. I'm well educated, my friend, and have 100% support for my claims. My mind is open to new ideas, and I can be corrected, but not by dogma and blind-eyed PhDs. By the way, I know exactly where oil and gas are found, and you are destroying the planet by fracking and burning. The expansion of the planet is just staggeringly destructive, and that is what all of this turbulence is happening, all this overheating and global. I've shown all of this stuff. Anyway, I said, please explain this. These are the things I sent to him. They are muscle sarcomeres and caused the Turkey collapse. As a geologist, please explain. He should be able to explain this. So what did I send him for pictures? Here they are right here. This is what membranes, muscle looks like. You see that? That's what muscles look like. I should show you a better shot of this whole thing. But that is what muscle looks like. Okay, check this out. These are the sarcomeres. These are muscle. And so are these. All right. What happens is the red stuff just erodes away, and the connective tissue stays very, very tough. So you end up with these little blocky-looking things that have just all the straps within them, which is what you see here. Okay, now they think this is continually over millions of years, these layers show up. No, those are sarcomeres. Those are muscle sarcomeres, and they have eroded. And all of this stuff is the red eroded blood that eroded out from these sarcomeres. And here's what they look like. Hold on. You know, I can help Paul to understand what he's seeing when he drills, because there's different types of muscles. They're all different, the skeletal, cardiac, smooth muscle. Now, here's what they look like when they turn into mud fossils. This is a slice straight across. So this is the surface of the skin up here. That is the layer of the skin. And right below, you have your little muscle sarcomeres that are below your skin layer. Now, this is the blood that services these sarcomeres. And you have to have a ton of blood. And these are the blocks. Now, they will fracture right along these lines, and they did, and that happened in Turkey with devastating consequence. Now, looking at something and seeing something and understanding biology versus geology may not be how science works, but it is how reality works. And this is that olive grove, and there was a gigantic collapse. It wasn't an earthquake, it was a collapse. And they had no idea why. Here's why. These are sarcomeres. These are muscle sarcomeres. That is red blood. These are the banding of the muscle sarcomeres. That's red blood. There's blood going to saturate into here. And way down at the bottom down here, this picture doesn't show it well, but there's one I had that had extreme amounts. I could see where the red blood had run out. So think of it this way. Here's all your layers of tissue. We know we got a bunch of red blood coming in here. All right, and you see the fracture here? You see that fracture? That's part of the collapse. That is part of the collapse. I wouldn't be so close to that, my friend. I would get the hell away from that. Because this is when the red blood comes in, is where it erodes out easily. The red blood just runs out. So here's what happened. Down below, there's going to be those bands of red blood. Remember the bands of red blood? Whoops, you didn't see them. Hold on. All right, I was kind of nasty again, and I sort of apologize for this, but I can't help myself. I'm so smart I could help you because you just don't understand, da 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 da. Well, let's do a Zoom and explain the things that I have just shown, rather than just snipe at me for years. Now, I said I suggest you get educated on biology and chemistry and physics and space biology and also subatomic physics, also as I am. Of course, I also am extremely educated on real, actual biology and geology. I can help you if you open your mind. Asteroid Bennu and Psyche are hearts in space, and the evidence is on Earth now. From Bennu, return to Earth, which will prove my claims. It already has. I can see the sarcomeres. I can see everything. And they know it's blood. It's blood. It came out of a heart. It's blood. So I said, also look into menticide. I can't help myself for being nasty sometimes. But, this has been a very, very arduous journey against people like this. But I'm glad he at least stood up. Now, if he will respond to this video, my claims of the things that I have just shown, well, then we can get somewhere. Now, I just finished the video, and it progresses to become a little bit nasty on my side. However, the reason is I have DNA tests done almost 10 years ago that show these 3 specimens I sent, and 2 of them were giants, are 100% human mitochondrial DNA, and there was excellent quality. And this was done right to, excellent quality DNA sequencers compared to the whole national database of all the DNA, and it was mitochondrial, cytochrome B, and D loop region. And this is all the CTAGs. This is not a cheap test. This was expensive, and it took a couple of months to get it done. And it's been dismissed by everybody, and this guy as well. Oh, that doesn't mean anything. You contaminated, I'm sure. No, I have the specimens here. You want to test them? They're available. This is why I get a little upset. Like I say, again, I want to apologize for how I proceed with this a little bit. I don't want to apologize too much. Because this is reality. This is not something to be scoffed at and told I should go read books about it. Now, I have specimens here. This right here is a 3-foot long fingertip. And that's a fingertip, and that is the fingernail right there. That's the little bumper pad that bumps up to the bone so it doesn't scrub. Vein and artery. This is the piece that I broke off of here so I could get down inside to get blood out of there. I don't take them off the surface. Now don't forget, and this is on my property, sitting on top of the earth. This has been even buried. I didn't have to do anything. I looked, I said, holy smokes, it's a big fingerprint. And the fingerprints are still on there. I don't own the property anymore, but the fingerprint, where is it? Somewhere here. Here it is right here. That's the piece I broke off. There's the fingerprints right there. They're as wide as my thumb. Like that. Those 2 little dots are the sweat pores. And this is one of the little ridges that you have just like yours. And your fingerprints start right up next to your fingernail as well, because the fingernail's right up here, and the fingernail's huge. Don't forget, this thing was 3 feet long, and the fingerprints are in very good shape. And I also had another one, CAT scan, which was smaller, but still good size. And this is the bone that was in it. And this is a 2D CAT scan. I had 3D CAT scan as well, but 2D is the best because you can see the surface features, which really are obvious. This is a tendon, and right there is a blood vessel. This is the other tendon on the other side, so you can do this sort of stuff with your fingers. And that is also a blood vessel. You got black and you got red blood. That's why there's 2 different color looking things. The red runs right out and it just bleeds out. The black is different. The vein blood is a different chemistry, and there's valves in the veins, so it sort of plugs it up as it goes along. The red blood just blows right out. But this is the bone, And you can see it in the CAT scan, the 3D, but not as well as I would have liked to be able to see it. I thought I had it here somewhere. I guess not. Anyway, that's. I had 7 things CAT scanned. Obvious what it was. Now, all of this stuff we're going to go about in a minute, but what Paul is going to be talking about is drilling through things. They always see the same microfossils. Yes, because they're usually drilling into lungs or hearts or livers, where all the blood is thickest. And going through, they're going to go through these I'm sorry, I can't think of it. The pleura, which is all the fibers in the fascia. You see these little white fibers? If he shows me the stuff he's drilling through, I can guarantee you it's going to be almost identical to this. And when he sees this coming up, he says, uh-oh, next thing is going to be is we're going to hit down here where the blood is. This would have been almost one big chunk of blood. And as it festers underground, it can start decompose. When it decomposes, it expands. When it expands, it heats up. When it heats up under no oxygen, it converts into hydrocarbons, and that's what blows out. So if he drills too far into this, yes. So I know what he's doing. And again, I got a little testy. I can't help it. It's been years and years of people denying and saying, oh, I can teach you how to read a book about geology. And these are the things they say. All this stuff happened 250 million years ago. No, absolutely not. No way in the world. The Triassic was about 3,700, somewhere around there. It was recorded in ancient history. Venus almost impacted Earth. It wrenched. And it was a great worldwide flood. They say that's yes. And Yale and everybody now, they agree. The Triassic layer was one worldwide layer. Red bed, gray clay, black cap. Red bed is the boiled off flesh. All right? Organs and stuff stayed intact pretty good because of the fascia. I call it fascia facilitated fossilization. But the flesh boiled off and made the red bed. And then the bones and the tendons and all that, and all plant life and everything, made a gray clay above the red muddy bed. And then above that was a black cap that came down. And guess what? I am in that region, and this is what I have here in my shop, is a Triassic human footprint. This is the red bed. There was a gray clay was on top of this red bed. And a guy came and he stood right on, or came running, hit there and went like this and kept going and pushed the gray clay down through the red bed, which means, and his footprint is absolutely flawless, which means this gray clay was wet as the red bed was wet at the same time, and then the black cap is here, all came down on top of this, which is a fallout from all of the burning and all of the combustion and volcanoes and all that. Those are the 3 layers. And they all happen almost instantaneously. These two were both wet at the same time, no question. And this fell down on top of that, and there was no erosion on this footprint whatsoever. It's just flawlessly uneroded. All 3 of them were together when I found this. And that is the red bed right there. The gray clay went right down under it and squished it out of the way. And that came one laid on top. I'm 6 miles away from Dinosaur State Park, which is littered with dinosaur footprints like this. In the same stuff, the exact same stuff. Shown that many times, and nobody will look into this because it's too spectacular for the average mind. And that's why geologists poo-poo it, and they say, oh, let's just go and make up all these other things, which I believe is what Paul buys into, and I'm just trying to show that that's not right. Now, if he can confront my evidence, I'm glad to discuss it. But when I just get told, no, you have to read page 27, no, I'm not going to do that. I already read page 27. It's nonsense. So, anyway, I got kind of on the edge of nastiness, because I can get pretty nasty. So, Paul, I'm sorry to be a little bit nasty, my friend, but if you can address my claims, and I can understand what you're seeing. I know exactly what you're seeing. You see the same thing over and over. Why are we seeing the same thing? Well, because you're drilling through fascia. You're drilling through a membrane. They're all the same. You're hitting phosphates. You're hitting aluminum silicates more than likely. That's what a membrane is. And the thicker it is, you know, when you hit it right at the edge of it, yes, you got to stop drilling. And then, you know, secure the area so the whole thing won't explode. I agree with that. But, you know, and it was interesting for him to say we had to pump pressure into it so that it wouldn't explode back out. So you equalize the pressure. That I didn't know about. There's things I learned from everybody. But I do want to be heard from my perspective as well, and my evidence. This is not nonsense. This is evidence. I have no toes. We have a ton of these. They're another human species, basically. And all of this appears to have happened very, very, very recently. And as Velikovsky recorded, and everybody in the world recorded, approximately 1500 BC. That makes it about 3,700 years ago. That's all. And that's when these three layers were laid down. So I'm going to do the video about Paul's statements to me and my statements back to him. And again, I do want to apologize for being a little nasty, but I jumped right into it and started doing it as I had a little bit of tension in my mind, you know. I've been attacked at this stuff for many years. And just to have somebody completely, totally dismiss everything without paying any attention and say, oh, you got to read this, you got to do that, and I'm a geologist, that's why. Even when we first started, it was destroyed by, I'll tell you the guy's name, Scott Walter. We showed Jim Burchell and Arlie Caudle showed a head on TV on the History Channel. Here, I'll show you what it is. And Scott Walter came on and said, that's not real, that's a fake. That's carved. And I said, no. And I got a hold of Scott, and we went back and forth a number of times. And I said, this is not carved. That nose is bent over there. Somebody stepped on it, or it was on its face, or whatever, and it pushed the red is blood. Because all he said on TV was, oh, that's just iron oxide, it doesn't mean anything. No, that's what blood is made out of, is iron and iron oxides. The black is the vein blood, the red is the artery blood. The nose is pushed over. That nobody carved that. It's just not even thought. You can't even think that. I don't know whose mind would think that. To just dismiss the details, and just, oh, no, I can't be. And that's exactly what happened. It took it was way under a minute. I think it was less than 30 seconds to dismiss this and say, that's it. It's a total fake. No, nothing. And we actually had this CAT scan against the wishes of University of Texas in Austin, and that turned out to be almost legal. I said, no, I want this CAT scan, because Yale said the only people they would take it from is University of Austin, Texas. So I said, okay. And they didn't want to do it. And it was a ton of money, and they still didn't want to do it. And I forced it, and they did do it, and the CAT scan was just absolutely horrible. And but I have to admit, this is extremely transitioned. Now, I have fingertips of giants that were extremely transitioned like this, and there's very little detail. But for theirs, there was absolutely no detail whatsoever. Just a blob, a black blob. That was it. And now I had mine done at Jesse Garan Associates. They're the best in the world, and they did the 2D and the 3D. And the 3D was very subtle. But if you look and you think, you can see it. The 2D, it was obvious. Let me just show you the two of them. Well, here it is. I'm in that area. Hold on. All right, the 2D. Well, this is the 2D. And what happens with the 2D is they look at it from every single different angle to make all the different, and then they composite it to make like you were looking at it in a 3D image, but it's taken on the outside surfaces. And they do the same thing on a lot of asteroids and comets and so forth, when they go up to picture them, they say, oh, that's just CGI. No, not really. It is better than CGI. It is completely, they take every angle and then they composite it into something. But this is the actual picture of that bone. And anyway, hold on, let me get a 2D, a 3D. All right, again, this is from Jesse Garan. This is about 8 inches long. It's a fingertip. It's from a smaller giant I have. And this is the fingernail where the bed was. And again, because of the 2D, you can see it very well. Now, I think I brought up a 3D here. Here's the 3D. And you really can't see a lot, but because Jesse's equipment is so good and they are so excellent at what they do, you can see the membrane from the finger bone. And this is a thumb, and I know it's a thumb because the bone is offset, and the bone is offset not because it was laying in a crazy position. Here it is right here. It's offset because it's a thumb, and it's a right-hand thumb. You see this little chunk hanging over here? That's this. This side's flat, and this side hangs over. This is a thumb. The bone goes straight up this side. So, and I have the palm, and I have all kinds of things from this, knuckles and all kinds of things. And this one is on my property, although most of it is under my house. I had a addition put on the house, and what they dug up, I was digging for rocks, and it was all over. All this stuff, almost all of it came out of that. Now, again, I don't know where I left off on this, but what he's going to be looking for is this right here. All right, it's feldspar, just prior to hitting the sac of blood, which it would at this point be, and it depends on how much pressure it was in, what the pH was. Let me show you what they say about decomposition and creating hydrocarbons. Now, this is what Paul needs to do, is to study biology to understand geology, because it is the same thing. No, it's as simple as this. Thermal breakdown is when organic matter, which is a body, the creature's body, is exposed to increasing heat and pressure in an oxygen-free environment, which is under the ground and sealed in membranes, which are oxygen-free. It can break down into hydrocarbons. The lightest hydrocarbons are known as natural gas. That's what natural gas and oils, and the gas is the lightest. But then you have, your oils and so forth. But it's all from being in that pressurized containment. And then there's pH and there's all these other different things. So I understand what he was doing. They're drilling down, and when they hit the membrane, they say, oh, we're getting close. All right, so don't forget, hydrocarbons are what you burn as methane, hydrocarbons. And it's just a hydrogen, 4 hydrogens attached to 1 carbon is how they claim that's constructed. And the hydrogens are free easily to explode. And that's why methane is so explosive. And when you compress it, the more you compress it, the more explosive it becomes. As these energies push outwards. All right, and as they push outwards in a containment where they can't get out, they just, and the heat builds up like crazy, and the pressure forces more and more and more of them to break down into more and more just complete hydrogens, and floating around with some carbon inside of them. But the more hydrogen you get, the more explosive the gas becomes. Okay, so another thing that I'd like to have Paul explain to me, he's a geologist. This is nothing more than geology. It's in space. What is this formation here, first of all? And why are these little stripes here? why is this big ball attached to this structure here? And what is all this dust? Now, I can explain that in very complete detail because that is a hip joint. Now, what happens when it hits the sun area, see here it's not really directly being banged by the sun. When it came up closer, February of 2015, it was right in the sights of the sun where it was really getting irradiated. You see how brilliant it's glowing? Now, notice something very, pay attention to the details. This ball is not, there's nothing shooting out of this ball. And there's nothing really shooting out up here. It's glowing a lot, but there's nothing shooting out. It's getting really banged. Now, the sun was hitting in this one particular spot. And I'm going to tell you what that is. That's an artery. That's why it's so enormous, the amount of barbecue juice that's shooting out of there. This is the circle that surrounds, and it has to be fed with some blood. And the artery is coming down here and going to feed up into these blood vessels, or vice versa. But the arteries pump a lot of blood into certain areas, and then it gets distributed. And these are the distributors. Zing, zing, zing. And then they would have muscle coming up here. The muscle is broken off just after the tendon gets weak. You have tendon, and then you get into muscle, and then the muscle just falls apart. So here's the ball. Here's the tendon stalk. Here's where the muscle would have been, and it's fallen off. And this is all part of a hip. And this is Comet 67P. I'd like to have somebody explain to me why I'm wrong about this. And space smells like steak. All the astronauts say when they come in out of a spacewalk, their suits smell like a sirloin. Look it up. So, Roger, big deal. That could be dust. You don't know what that is. Well, yes, I do, because they put a monitor up there to check the chemistry, and here's what the chemistry was. Hydrocarbons, CHs, 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 iron oxides, ferrous oxides, silicon, sodium, carbon. It's biology. And they say, yes, organic. Then they say, well, it's organic. Well, what does that mean, organic? It means biology. Well, it does and it doesn't. We just don't really know. Well, I do. I know exactly what that thing is. No question whatsoever. The chemistry's here. The anatomy's there. That's the problem. They can't see because they can't open their eyes big enough. The academic, people that have been educated to believe a certain thing. And once you're educated into believing something that you just can't get away from, you just can't get away from it. That's what I have found. Now, I am a different person. I can get away from anything. As long as you can show me the truth of something, I will have to examine it. Now, I am at a point right now where I'm trying to figure out eternity. And this is a tough, tough, tough thing. And I have I have my own opinions right now about that, and everybody has to make up their own opinions about eternity and God and Jesus Christ and all that, which I have made up mine. And it appears to me that the things he said when he was here on Earth correspond to the things that are in space and the Earth itself. He said the Earth is a corpse. That's what he said. The Earth is a corpse. And he also said we are made out of light. We are children of the light, which we are, because everything is made from the particles of light that are coming to Earth to make everything grow. Now, because that's what we do. We eat everything that has grown from the light that's come to Earth. And we are particles of light. We can explode into particles of light. We can be burned back into particles of light, which happens occasionally. All right, so we just went over Comet 67P, the chemistry and the whole 9 yards. Now, at the same time, they were up on Mars, and this is from Mars Curiosity mission. This is the Mars Crab, and that is actually an artery. These are the little blood vessels servicing the sarcomeres that are here. Now, I can't remember whether I showed you the sarcomeres or not, but I will again, whether you saw them or not. here it is right here. It has to service this with copious amounts of blood. As a matter of fact, I don't think I showed it to you yet, but it will be coming up, because these are sarcomeres, the same as these are sarcomeres, the same as these are sarcomeres. All right, these are in our body. That's a microscope, electron microscope. Well, here they are in Mars, right here. The same sarcomeres, fed by an artery, which has to feed tons of blood into this, as I showed in this shot here, which is the sarcomeres, and this is how much blood comes into them. This is a mud fossil. This is how high quality the preservation can be. This is the skin up at the top. All right, so this is the layer of leading down to the muscle. And here's the muscle. Now you need a little bit of blood up here, but not like you do down here. Down here you need some serious blood, and these are the sarcomeres. Now, those, they will erode right here. If this was in a different place, it wouldn't have preserved so well. And this is the condition up on Mars. Those sarcomeres did not preserve well. All of the red blood, this bloody soft tissue, just eroded out because there's no moisture up there to keep them sort of moist in there. You know, it dries out and they just dust off. And that's what's happened here. But these are sarcomeres. You see the blocks? And all the stripes going this way? They pull in to make the muscle work. I know it's gigantic. I can't help that. It's just what it is. All right, and that's on Mars. And here they are really close. You see what they are? And you see there's no erosion here. There's not a drop of water has hit here. This is just barely dusted off. You cannot get this effect here on Earth. It just can't happen. But these are the sarcomeres. You see them? This is what's up on Mars. And they say this happened over millions of years, layer after layer after layer. No, not at all. Not at all. That was a creature's body. So I have shown you a bunch of creatures' bodies. And also up on Mars is the Mars-Morse code, which is interstitium. If you look it up, these balls attached to these straps, and that's what lets your skin and all that stuff go this way and that way and come back to wherever the balls are implanted. And that, I think I have a shot of somewhere. But that's, okay, yeah, here it is right here. You see, that's what the interstitium was. That's Mars-Morse code. All those balls and straps. And a couple spots are pinched together and a couple spots are pulled apart. This is how big this stuff here is on Earth. You see that? That's Hunstanton Beach. Hunstanton Cliffs over in the United Kingdom. I have a friend, Neil Longren, that went out there, sent me a whole bunch of information about this place. Real nice, tight, up-close pictures. It's nothing more than the interstitium layer below the skin. And then this is the fleshy tissue, which all the balls erode out of, just like they would if you had washed away this and this. And the balls are tough. They're not going to wash away. This turns into just a mud. Precisely what you see here. That's just turned into mud. And the balls have a lot of nutrition in them, so all the little sea creatures start growing on there as moss. Now, in the salt waters, they grow this brown moss. In fresh waters, they grow green moss, and I mean green. You wouldn't believe it. Well, I'll show you. Anyway, these are the same balls as the Moki marbles, only they're bigger. And in a creature, they relate to this kind of a thing in a microscope. Real life hobbits. I know how Paul must feel, you know, having put all his faith into geology, what he was taught, but it's just not right. This is not true. Millions of years in one picture, absolutely not. That is tendon right there, and that's the only reason it's standing up here, because it's tendon. There would have been a bone right here, and muscle would have come here. And I have a sample in my shop that shows that, if I can find it. Here it is right here. This is where the bone is. All right, that's where the bone is. Then there's a chunk here attached to the bone, which is tendon. Tendon just barely does that. And then it hits the muscle here. And the muscle is very tough and strappy here, and it goes abrupt transition, and then it falls apart. And here's a better shot of it right here. All right. All we don't see is the bone. The bone is right here. So we just can't see that. Now, what do we see? We see the tendon that's sticking up in the ocean. Exact same thing. All these same stripes. And in the middle is the tough one. And it has a little ball on the end. You'll see that in the ocean one in a minute. And right here, the abrupt transition turns into muscle. That's when you need the blood. That's when you need all the blood. Here, there's no blood. You see how it's brown? You see how that's brown and this is pinkish? Maybe this will help. This is brown and this is pink, and it's because it's being flushed with blood. And now, you see here, right there, that little spot and that spot. Let me come up close. First of all, that's the tendon, and it's got a curve to it so that it can twist and do this and that. And the anchor ball is right in the center. Now, coming forward, it transitions abruptly, instantaneously, into muscle. That's the abrupt transition. Now, what happens after that? You have 2 or 3 abrupt transitions. It appears to me this is the first obvious abrupt transition is right about here. Because this stuff is almost about like that. Only now we got muscles starting to infuse into it. The pinky stuff. And it's starting to grab onto this and that and starting to create the sarcomeres. So as you go forward here, you got that abrupt transition, then you get another abrupt transition here, and then out here they just fall apart, because at that point they're primarily almost 100% sarcomeres. All right, see out here? See how these are like bundles, but they just drop right off, they fall apart. All right, now, this is what they're drilling through. This stuff here, you're not going to get any oil out of there. He's looking for oil and gas. There's no oil and gas in there because there's no major pockets of blood or digestible stuff like in your stomach and your intestines and your liver. That stuff makes oil and gases. And the more refined it is, like the heart and the lungs, you're going to get more quality hydrocarbons. However, the downside of this whole thing is that as these things burn, they're swelling up our atmosphere at absolutely staggering amounts, which is causing our global warming. It's not just that the carbon can't get away. The carbon will not go away. It's the expansion of the gases that from something that was all sequestered and held together down in there and not bothering anybody, all of a sudden you let it out, burn it, it's thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands of times bigger than when it was in the ground. And all that has to go somewhere. Our expanding atmosphere is scrubbing through space, creating all the turmoil and all the global warming. This is why I'm kind of upset about everything, because nobody will listen to anything, even when you have all the evidence I have. I'm being told by Paul, you have no evidence, Paul, you have nothing. I have all the evidence, they have nothing. So he's seeing the same bits and pieces that come up before they hit oil. No problem. That's all the fascia. That's the fascia, which is coating it. And I could tell you, if you showed me the different types of fascia, I could tell you what kind of organ you were going through, more than likely. Okay, I'm going to leave it at this. Now, I have to, again, I apologize. I apologize to him, and I apologize to you, and I apologize to him again. But I saw him as being very condescending, very, arrogant, and just sending me something out of a book, basically. Now, he did have some interesting points to make about when they do the drilling, and I understand that they're going to see the same layer of rock just before they hit the explosion zone as the fascia. Anyway, so I was kind of nasty, let's put it that way, but I'm going to leave it at that. I'll see what I hear from Paul. Now, if he's a real scientist, he will respond to my discussion about what he's claiming, because he said you have to address this, 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 this. I did every one of them. So Paul, the ball, she is in your court, my friend. I'd like to hear your responses, sir.